won't be a moment. All right.
Possiamo partire? Ok. Allora, aspetta. Ah, ok, va bene. Tu lo vedi? No, aspetta, perché qua c'è la modalità relatore. Un attimo.
This presentation's been live streamed as well, you see.
No, perché ha messo di nuovo lo schermo esteso. Non so perché c'è questo portatile che continua a fare a spostare. Ok, ci siamo. Fine.
Do I use that to move
Yes.
on? Okay. Right, sorry about that everybody. This presentation's been live streamed as well because we've got viewers online as well. Okay, right, so just gone through the main cities of the United Kingdom. Right, I'm sorry, the presentation's not moving forward, so I'm just going to carry on. All right. Okay, so UK labour market then. The unemployment rate in the UK at the moment is 5.4%. That's from June to August this year. You also have to realise that the unemployment is 1.77 million, and then there is a rise. At the moment, there's 8.35 million people working part-time. There is an increase since earlier this year of about 68,000 people more working part-time. So the unemployment rate has probably fallen as a result of people taking up these employment opportunities. There are more unfilled part-time jobs available than there are full-time jobs, so people are looking at taking 2 part-time job opportunities. Okay, I'm sorry about the screen's just not moving. So skill shortage occupations for the UK, these tend to be the same as the ones that many of the other European countries have. The main ones tend to be nurses, chefs, skilled chefs in all positions, sous chefs, commis chefs. It is an industry that has a high turnover of staff. That's right across the UK. You will find many employers offering various positions. They might be live in or live out, and we do have some information about where you can look for these jobs if you are interested in the hospitality industry. Another skill shortage areas are social workers, engineers within power systems, engineers, control engineers and protection engineers. Some of the other skill shortages we have at the moment, and this varies from time to time, but the constant ones are secondary education, science, maths teachers, generally ages 11 to 16-year-olds, teachers in special schools, doctors in certain specialisms, medical radiographers, we've got graphic designers, welding trades, biological scientists and biochemists, and skilled musicians and dancers and animators, and ballet dancers as well. Okay. Some of the other things now, let's look at some practical things like where do you look for work? EURES website, have you all used the EURES website? No? Nobody's used the EURES website? No? Okay, that's one of the things to look for work, not just in the UK, but right across all the other European countries. We've got various job fairs. I mentioned that we've got various people joining us online, viewing the presentation. We get job fairs in person like we have today as well. We've got newspapers, company websites, private recruitment agencies, online agencies. You have to be aware that there are only 1/3 of the vacancies that are advertised within our PES. Okay? Another third are advertised by private employment agencies and specialist employment agencies. And then you get another third that are advertised just in newspapers. So when you're doing your job search, you've got to target all these 3 areas in order to make sure that you've covered your ground and find the relevant vacancies. And approximately 85% of recruitment is actually done online. So it's important that you've got your CV right. You've got to follow the employer's instructions. You've got to do a covering letter. And private employment agencies is another area where a lot of employers are recruiting with. And you've got to be aware that they should not be charging you for anything. That is obviously illegal. Okay? So no employment agency should be charging you for their services. The public employment service in the UK is called Job Centre Plus. In Northern Ireland, it's called Department of Employment and Learning, DEL. When you come to the UK to look for work, you don't actually have to go in to a public employment service office. You can go in if you want just to use the machines or the computers to help you look for work. But they are usually very busy, but you don't actually need to go. You can just do your job search online using your own personal laptops. Okay, education and qualifications. Have you heard of NARAC? No? That is somewhere that it's called National Academic Recognition Information Centres. You may be in certain occupations, like the skill shortages, that you need to get your qualifications translated into English and get an equivalent qualification. Okay, so the employers know that you're qualified to the right level. There is a cost for that service. Okay. You've also got something called Prospects. You can use the Prospects website to do some job search. It's really good websites used by UK university students. Gives you information on collating different types of CVs. Gives you hints and tips on interviews. So a lot of people I've looked, or CVs I've looked at this week, are slightly different. You're probably using the EURES CV. It is not the format that UK employers will recognise. So you've got to adapt your CV, look at that website and work out what is the best one for you. I think there are 4 different types of CVs listed on that website. Okay. Now then, the other one I wanted to mention, because a lot of people have asked me today about internships. Internships aren't usually recognised as much, or they weren't recognised as much in the UK as they were across Europe. It is something that UK employers are promoting a little bit more, and there are more opportunities, and there are more and more internships that don't actually pay you. They might give you expenses. So if you're looking at opportunities within the internship area, think about how are you going to support yourself if you come into the UK. You will have to find accommodation. You will have to provide transport for yourself. You've got to think about meals as well. Okay, there might be certain other expenses. So think carefully before taking up some of these internships. All right. Right, job application process. Briefly, CVs have to be 2 pages maximum. I have seen CVs that are 8-9 pages, and I've seen some that are 4-5 with fonts or writing about 10, which is just too small. Employers will not look at your CV. Your CV has to be 1-2 pages maximum. Okay. You also need to include a typed letter, which is what we call a cover letter. Again, if you look at the Prospects website, it gives you information on how to do a good cover letter. An employer will only spend 20 seconds looking at a CV. He will know whether he's interested in you or not. Okay? Right. You don't need actually to put on your CV photographs. In the UK, we don't have photographs. You don't need to include your date of birth, marital status, amount of children you've got. You don't put anything like that on. Okay? Because all the vacancies in the UK are open to both men and females. Okay, for equal opportunities. So you can just send your CV with your basic details on and your career history. That is all they should be looking for. Unless, of course, they've got an exception in case the job requires just a female or just a male or certain restrictions. Okay? Right, employment law. This is important. We include this in the presentation. National minimum wage. Okay, this is the rate of pay that an employer's got to pay you by law. So an employer can't say to you, if you're 21, I'll give you £5 an hour. An employer's actually got to pay you £6.70 an hour if you're over 21. If you're 18 to 20, they've actually got to pay you £5.30 and £3.87 if you're under 18. You're usually entitled to 28 days minimum annual leave or holidays. They can include bank holidays in that. Roughly it works out 1 day a month. So for the month that you work, you usually get a day off. Contracts is another question that we get a lot. Contracts can be written or they can be verbal. You have a right as an employee to ask for a written contract if that's what you want. And there's also something called working time regulations, in which you can agree to work more than 40 hours a week. Okay, but you've got to agree that, and that's a voluntary thing that you do with the employer. Alright. Okay, so when you come into the UK, a bit like in all of the European countries, you need to have a social security number. We call that the national insurance number. This is a number that you can only get when you have arrived and you're actually living in the UK. You apply for it by phone, you get an appointment, you go to your interview. It is a security interview, so you will have to take original documents with you, your identification documents, your passport, details of where you're living, any bills that you have as proof of address, anything like that. And like I said, it is a security interview, and you can't get away with not paying national insurance contributions. There's various rates that you pay. You get 12% deducted from your earnings, and the handout that I've already given you details all this information for you. So if you earn between £155 and £815 or more, you will get 12% deducted, and 2% if your earnings are over 815. Okay? If you are self-employed, i.e. you work for yourself, you are responsible for your own tax and national insurance. You are classed as self-employed. And again, there's more information on the handouts that I've actually given you. Tax is another big one. Personal allowance is 10,600, so anything over that, you're actually paying tax. Basic rate is 20%. So if you're earning from 0 to 31,785, you will pay 20% tax. If you earn over the 31,000, you will pay 40% on anything over that 31. Okay? Right. And an additional 45% over 150,000. So if you're lucky enough to get a job paying you over 150,000, you'll pay 45%, anything over. Alright. Self-employed people pay their own tax. They do a self-assessment at the end of, I think it's December, January. You have to send your returns in. Every year, HMRC will give you a tax code. That can change depending on your circumstances, which means they give you a tax code and what your personal allowance is. Okay, there is a website I've given you on that handout, so you do need to read that and be familiar with what your tax code is when you start working. So, you know, this is important information, so you're not paying too much tax. Healthcare, accommodation and cost of living. Right, what might be the best thing about living and working in the UK? Anything? No? What do you think? No? What about the weather? What's the best thing? Right, okay. Right. Yes, it does rain a lot in the UK. Summers are very short and winters tend to feel a lot longer. But the weather seems to be the same here as it is in the UK. But by now we would have had quite a bit of rain. So if you come into the UK, make sure you bring your umbrella with you. All right. What about food? What's the most popular food in the UK today, do you think? Come on. What's it? Fish and chips? Come on. Fish again? Any others? Pudding? Yeah? Shall I tell you? Right. Nation's top 10 cuisines. Chinese. Then we've got Indian, British, bangers and mash, fish and chips, Italian. Got Italian favourite on there, pizzas. And then it goes on, and we've got French at the bottom. Right, let's move on then. Straight after the food, on to healthcare in the UK. NHS, National Health Service. So, visiting a doctor in the UK is free, providing that they have the capacity to take you on their books. Normally you just go and visit a doctor in your locality where you live. And if they have got the capacity and room to take you on, they will take you onto their books. When you're travelling, we also suggest that you carry the EHIC card. Has everybody got a European Health Insurance card? Yeah? Okay, that proves that you're a European citizen and you can be treated. Although the doctor, you do not have to pay to see the doctor, there are certain things that you do have to pay for. You do have to pay for your glasses, so if you have a prescription, you will have to pay for your prescriptions. Any dental treatment, you will have to pay for that as well. There's varying scales for your treatments. And all your prescriptions. The average cost of one prescription from a doctor will be £8.20. So if you have a couple of prescriptions, you will have to pay that. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Okay. Accommodation. Right. Accommodation costs vary right across the UK. What normally happens is that you've got to pay your current rent and a month's rent in advance, or known as a deposit. Rates can vary from about £700 in some parts of London to some of the nicer parts of London like Kensington and Chelsea to £2,000-3,000 a month, even more. Okay. You've also got the lowest rental charges in the northeast from about 500, although there will be some regional variations. So really, this is why at the start of the presentation I do ask you what's the first thing you think about the UK. You said London, but think about all these other places. Think about the cost in rent, okay, and how much deposit you will have to pay. There is also another tax that you've got to pay. So you've paid your rent. You've got to pay for something called council tax. Different sorts of houses are in different bands, so the amount of council tax you pay varies every month. This pays for the local facilities like the police, the fire brigade, pays for emptying your bins and cleaning your streets, pays for the lighting, and this all goes to your local council. It's something that you can't get out of, it is something that you've got to pay. Okay? Any questions at all? No? Nothing? Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention there was that the childcare is the most expensive in Europe within the UK. So you've got to think about costs, additional costs, when you factor in coming to the UK. Some of the other costs that I had were water. You've got to pay a water charge as well. You can pay that monthly or you can pay that annually. You've got your gas, you've got your electric, Wi-Fi, telephone. All these charges seem to add up. Okay, and don't forget I mentioned earlier that people are taking up maybe 2 part-time jobs. Okay. Right, we're coming to the end now, so I know I've mentioned a few different things there. I've kept it very general, so if you've got any questions for me to ask. No? Any further information that anybody wants? Contact details for detailed information suitable for you. I know I've seen the gentleman here at length and we talked about all sorts of things because it can be personalised, the service. So, okay, thank you for joining me today. Thank you. All right.